My stepmother tried to take over my wedding plans. Then my real mom showed up and exposed her lies, and then I. All right, let me set the scene here. My name is Carter, and in 6 months, I'm supposed to marry the love of my life, Harper. She's everything I could have ever hoped for. Kind, driven, funny, and honestly way out of my league. We met in college and clicked immediately, so getting to this point feels like the perfect culmination of our story. But, of course, nothing is ever that simple. Enter Vanessa, my stepmother. Vanessa married my dad, Robert, when I was 14, about 3 years after my mom, Claire, left us. Or at least, that's what I was told growing up. She left us. I hadn't seen or heard from her since, and Vanessa stepped in to fill the role. At first, she was warm and welcoming, but over the years, her controlling side began to show. Everything in the house had to go her way, from what we ate to how we spent holidays. Dad, bless him, seemed oblivious to it, constantly defending her when I brought up her overstepping. Fast forward to now. Harper and I had been engaged for a few months, and while we were still in the early planning stages, things were coming together. Harper had a clear vision. A small outdoor wedding at this gorgeous garden venue she found, with her best friend Avery helping her as the maid of honor. I was just happy to support her vision, and we were working with a planner, Savannah, to bring it all to life. That's when Vanessa decided to get involved. It started subtly. She offered to help streamline the guest list. Harper and I had kept it modest, about 100 people, but Vanessa insisted we needed to invite more of my dad's business associates and their families. It's a reflection of the family, Carter, she said, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the dining table. We can't leave out people who matter to Robert's career. I didn't want to rock the boat, so I told her I'd think about it. Harper, however, wasn't as forgiving. Carter, this is our wedding, not your dad's networking event, she said later that night. She was right, of course. I just didn't know how to tell Vanessa no. Things escalated quickly after that. Vanessa showed up unannounced at one of our meetings with Savannah. She brought a binder. Yes, an actual binder, full of ideas for the wedding. Harper and I sat there, stunned, as Vanessa flipped through page after page of ornate centerpieces, extravagant venue ideas, and a dress she thought Harper should wear. A dress. This one is timeless, Vanessa said, sliding a glossy photo across the table. It was beautiful, sure, but also incredibly not Harper's style. Harper's face was polite, but I could tell she was holding back. Thank you, Vanessa, but I've already chosen my dress, she said, her tone firm but polite. I was proud of her in that moment. Vanessa, however, wasn't deterred. You're going to want something more classic, she said, ignoring Harper's statement. Trends fade, but class is eternal. Savannah looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. After Vanessa left that day, Harper turned to me. You've got to talk to her, she said. I mean it, Carter. This is our day, not hers. I promised I would, but part of me dreaded the confrontation. The tipping point came when Vanessa insisted on changing the venue entirely. Harper and I had put down a deposit for the garden venue, and it was perfect. But Vanessa claimed it was too rustic and suggested we move the whole thing to a hotel ballroom she had connections with. She even brought it up during a family dinner in front of my dad. Harper, I don't mean to overstep, Vanessa began, which was always code for her doing exactly that. But don't you think a ballroom would be more elegant? I've already spoken to a friend who can get us a discount. Harper set her fork down slowly. We've already booked the venue, she said. Her tone was polite, but I could see the fire in her eyes. Vanessa glanced at my dad for backup, and he, predictably, sided with her. Carter, you should at least consider it, Dad said. Vanessa knows what she's talking about. I felt like I was being backed into a corner. We'll talk about it, I said, trying to defuse the tension. Harper shot me a look that said, we better talk about this later. That night, Harper and I had our first real fight about the wedding. Carter, you can't keep letting her run the show, she said, pacing our living room. This is supposed to be about us, but every time she opens her mouth, it's like she's planning her own wedding. I know, I said, running a hand through my hair. I'll talk to her, I promise. It's just complicated. Harper stopped pacing and looked at me. You're not marrying Vanessa, Carter. You're marrying me. Remember that. She was right, of course. But how do you stand up to someone who spent the last decade making you feel like a kid who doesn't know any better? The next day, things took an even stranger turn. My younger sister, Zoe, came to me with something I wasn't prepared for. "I overheard Vanessa on the phone," she said, her voice low like she was sharing classified information. "She was talking to someone about the wedding, and she said something about needing to keep everything under control before it all falls apart. What does that even mean?" I asked, frowning. "I don't know," Zoe admitted, but she sounded scared, like she's hiding something. It felt like a punch to the gut. What could Vanessa possibly be hiding? And why was she so desperate to control my wedding? I didn't have the answers, but one thing was clear. This was just the beginning. After Zoe told me about Vanessa's mysterious phone call, I couldn't stop replaying it in my head. Keep everything under control before it all falls apart. What the hell was that supposed to mean? At first, I thought maybe Zoe misheard. Vanessa had always been controlling, but scared? Nervous? That didn't fit her at all. She thrived on being the one pulling the strings. But the more I thought about it, the more it gnawed at me. If she really was hiding something, what could it possibly be? And why would it have anything to do with my wedding? That week, Harper and I met up with Mason for drinks. Mason's been my best friend since high school. Solid guy, always knows how to cut through the noise. Harper and I filled him in on the latest Vanessa drama, and he just shook his head. "She's always been a piece of work, man," Mason said, taking a sip of his beer. "But this sounds next level. You really think she'd try to sabotage your wedding?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I feel like she's trying to make it hers." But Zoe overheard something weird. "Vanessa might be hiding something." "What kind of something?" Mason asked. I shrugged. "No clue. But she's acting way more intense than usual. It's like she's panicking. Maybe she knows she's losing control," Harper chimed in, swirling her cocktail. "People like her freak out when they can't control everything. And I'm not about to let her ruin this." Mason leaned back in his chair. "Here's what I think. You need to talk to your dad. If anyone knows what's up with Vanessa, it's him." Harper snorted. "Yeah, because Robert's been so helpful so far. He just defends her no matter what she does." Mason held up a hand. "I'm not saying he'll side with you, but he might know something you don't. It's worth a shot." I nodded, even though the idea of confronting Dad about Vanessa made my stomach churn. Still, Mason was right. If I didn't address this head-on, it would only get worse. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. The next evening, Dad invited me over to help with some house repairs. Vanessa wasn't around, which felt like a small miracle. As we worked on fixing a squeaky cabinet door in the kitchen, I decided to bring it up. "Dad, can I ask you something?" I said, trying to keep my tone casual. "Of course," he said, focused on tightening a hinge. "What's on your mind?" "It's about Vanessa," I started, hesitating. "She's been intense about the wedding. More than I expected." Dad looked up, his expression a mix of confusion and mild irritation. "She just wants it to be special for you. She's putting a lot of effort into this." "I get that," I said, choosing my words carefully. "But it feels like she's trying to take over." And Zoe overheard her talking about keeping everything under control. It sounded weird. He frowned. "Vanessa's been under a lot of stress lately. She just wants everything to go smoothly." "What kind of stress?" I pressed. "Is there something going on I don't know about?" Dad hesitated, which immediately set off alarm bells. "It's nothing you need to worry about, Carter. She's just handling a lot of moving parts." "Dad," I said firmly, "if something's going on, I have a right to know. This is my wedding. If there's a reason she's acting like this, I need to understand it." He sighed, setting down the screwdriver. "Look, Vanessa's always been someone who likes things a certain way. She's a perfectionist. I don't think there's anything more to it than that." I wanted to believe him, but his tone wasn't convincing. He was hiding something, whether he realized it or not. And I was determined to find out what. The next day, Harper and I had a meeting with Savannah to finalize some details for the ceremony. When we arrived, we were greeted by an unexpected and unwelcome surprise. Vanessa was already there, sitting at the table with Savannah and flipping through a stack of floral arrangements. "What's going on?" Harper asked, her voice tight. Oh, I thought I'd get a head start, Vanessa said breezily, as if she belonged there. I wanted to make sure everything was on track. Harper shot me a look that screamed, "Do something." I took a deep breath, stepping forward. "Vanessa, we've got this covered," I said, trying to keep my tone calm. "You don't need to handle this for us." "Nonsense," she said, waving me off. "I'm just helping. Besides, I've already made some great suggestions for the centerpieces." "Carter and I already chose the centerpieces," Harper said, her voice cold. "We don't need you to change them." Vanessa's smile didn't falter, but there was an edge to her tone when she replied, "I just want to make sure everything is perfect. You'll thank me later." The tension was unbearable. Savannah looked like she wanted to disappear. I could feel Harper's frustration boiling over, and honestly, I was right there with her. "Vanessa," I said, my patience running thin, "we appreciate your input, but this is our wedding. If we need your help, we'll ask for it." Her expression hardened, just for a moment, before she plastered on a fake smile. "Of course," she said, standing up. "I'll leave you to it." She left the room, but the damage was done. Harper turned to me, her eyes blazing. "This has to stop, Carter." "I mean it." "I know," I said, running a hand through my hair. "I'll handle it." But I wasn't sure how. Vanessa wasn't just meddling. She was bulldozing. And if I didn't figure out a way to stop her, Harper and I were going to lose control of our own wedding. That night, Zoe came to me with more information. "I overheard Vanessa again," she said, her voice low. "She was talking to someone about making sure Claire doesn't show up." I froze. "What?" she said. "We can't let Claire ruin this." I don't know what she meant, but she sounded freaked out. My mind raced. Claire, my biological mother, wasn't even invited to the wedding. Vanessa made sure of that. She'd always painted Claire as the villain, the woman who abandoned her family without a second thought. I hadn't questioned it before, but now I couldn't help but wonder. Was there more to the story? "I need to talk to Claire," I said, the words surprising even me. Zoe's eyes widened. "Do you even know how to find her?" "No," I admitted, "but I'll figure it out." For the first time in years, I felt like I needed to hear my mom's side of the story. Vanessa's behavior wasn't adding up, and I had a feeling Claire might have some answers. I couldn't stop thinking about Claire. For most of my life, I'd accepted Vanessa's version of events without question. My mom left us. She didn't want to be a part of my life. Vanessa stepped in as the maternal figure, and that was the end of it. But now, with Zoe's revelations and Vanessa's behavior spiraling out of control, I felt like I'd been living in someone else's narrative. Maybe it was time to rewrite it. With Mason's help, I tracked down Claire. It wasn't easy. She'd moved out of state years ago, and I wasn't even sure she'd want to hear from me. But when I finally got her number and called, the voice on the other end sounded hopeful. "Carter." Claire's voice trembled as she said my name. "Yeah," I said, my throat tight. "It's me." There was a pause, and I could hear her take a deep breath. "I didn't think I'd ever hear from you again." "Well, I'm getting married," I said, unsure how else to break the ice. "And I guess I realized there's a lot I don't know about what happened between you and Dad." Another pause. "I've always wanted to explain, but Vanessa." Her voice trailed off, and I could hear the hesitation in her tone. "Can we meet in person? There's so much I need to tell you, and I don't want to do it over the phone." We agreed to meet at a coffee shop halfway between her town and mine. I didn't tell Harper or anyone else. I wasn't sure what to expect, and I didn't want to stir the pot until I had some answers. When I walked into the coffee shop, I spotted Claire immediately. She looked older than I remembered, her blonde hair streaked with silver, but her smile was the same. I felt a wave of emotions, relief, confusion, anger, but I pushed them aside as I sat down across from her. "Hi," I said awkwardly. "Hi," she replied, her smile wavering. "You look so grown up." For a moment, we just sat there, unsure of how to bridge the gap of all those years. Finally, she broke the silence. "I want you to know I never stopped thinking about you," she said. "I sent letters, birthday cards, even Christmas gifts. But I never got a response." I frowned. "I never got any of that." Her eyes filled with sadness. "I figured as much." Vanessa made it clear I wasn't welcome in your life. She told me if I tried to contact you, she'd make sure your father fought for full custody and cut me out completely. I stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. She told me you left us, that you didn't want to be a part of my life. Claire shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. That's not true. I fought to stay in your life, but Vanessa convinced your dad that I was unstable. She manipulated everything. I didn't have the resources to fight back. I thought if I stayed away, it would be better for you. I never wanted to hurt you, Carter. Her words hit me like a truck. All those years of resentment, the feeling of abandonment, it had all been built on a lie. Vanessa had taken my mom away from me, and I hadn't even realized it. Why? I asked, my voice shaking. Why would she do that? I don't know for sure, Claire admitted, but I think she wanted control. Over you, over Robert, everything. She always seemed to care more about appearances than anything else. And now, hearing that she's meddling in your wedding, I can't just sit back and watch her hurt you. Hurt me. The words echoed in my mind. Vanessa had already done enough damage. But now, she was trying to control Harper and me too, and I wasn't going to let her. I want you to come to the wedding, I said suddenly. Claire looked stunned. Are you sure? Vanessa won't be happy about that. I don't care, I said firmly. You're my mom. You deserve to be there. She smiled through her tears. Thank you, Carter. That means more to me than you'll ever know. The next day, I told Harper everything. She was shocked, but supportive. I always had a weird feeling about Vanessa, she said. But this is next-level manipulative. She's not going to like it, I warned. Bringing Claire to the wedding is going to cause a scene. Then let her cause a scene, Harper said, her eyes blazing. If Vanessa can't handle the truth, that's her problem, not ours. It felt good to finally have clarity, to feel like I was taking back control of my own life. But of course, Vanessa wasn't going to let that happen without a fight. Claire's arrival at my pre-wedding family dinner was, to put it mildly, explosive. Vanessa froze the moment Claire walked through the door. For a split second, she looked genuinely terrified, but she quickly masked it with a scowl. What is she doing here? Vanessa demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. She's here because I invited her, I said, stepping in front of Claire. She's my mom, Vanessa. She has every right to be here. She left you, Vanessa snapped, her face reddening. She abandoned this family. She doesn't deserve to. She didn't leave, I interrupted, my voice rising. You pushed her out. You lied to me, Vanessa. You made me believe she didn't care, when all she ever wanted was to be part of my life. The room went dead silent. My dad, who had been standing off to the side, looked completely blindsided. Carter, what are you talking about? He asked. Claire sent letters, I said, turning to him. She tried to stay in touch, but Vanessa made sure I never saw them. She's been lying to us for years. My dad looked at Vanessa, his expression a mix of confusion and anger. Vanessa, is this true? Vanessa opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. For once, she was at a loss for how to manipulate the situation. Claire stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. Robert, I never stopped loving Carter. I only stayed away because Vanessa made it impossible for me to be part of his life. She threatened me, manipulated you, and I let it happen because I thought it was what was best for him. But I won't stay silent anymore. The tension in the room was unbearable. Finally, Vanessa spoke, her voice trembling with rage. You're ruining everything. This wedding was supposed to be perfect, and now you're bringing all this drama into it. No, I said, my voice steady. You're the one who's been ruining everything, and I'm not going to let you anymore. Vanessa glared at me, but she didn't argue. For the first time in years, I felt like I had the upper hand, and I wasn't going to back down. Vanessa left the family dinner in a huff, slamming the door on her way out. The rest of us sat in stunned silence, the weight of Claire's revelations hanging over us. My dad looked shell-shocked, his hands gripping the edge of the table like he was afraid the world might tip over. I don't know what to say, he muttered finally, looking at Claire. If what you're saying is true, Vanessa lied to me for years. She did, Claire said softly. And I understand why it's hard to hear. But the truth is, I never stopped fighting for Carter. I just didn't have the power to stand up to her. I could see the wheels turning in my dad's head as he tried to process everything. He wasn't a bad guy, just someone who had been blinded by Vanessa's charm for too long. I hoped this would finally open his eyes. Harper reached for my hand under the table, giving it a reassuring squeeze. I glanced at her, and she gave me a small, determined smile. I wasn't sure how I would have survived this mess without her. The next day, I decided it was time to confront Vanessa directly. I found her in the backyard, pacing near the garden like a storm cloud. She didn't even acknowledge me as I approached, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "Vanessa, we need to talk," I said firmly. She whirled around, her eyes blazing. "What's there to talk about? You've clearly chosen sides." "This isn't about sides," I shot back. "This is about the truth. You lied to me. You lied to Dad. You tried to erase my mom from my life. And for what? To keep control? To make yourself the center of everything?" Vanessa scoffed. "You have no idea what you're talking about. Your mother abandoned you." She didn't," I interrupted. "She sent letters, Vanessa. She tried to stay in touch, but you made sure I never saw them. Claire told me everything, and honestly, I believe her." Her face faltered for a moment, a flicker of doubt breaking through her mask of confidence. "She's just trying to turn you against me," Vanessa snapped. "Can't you see that? She's jealous of the life I built with your father. She's trying to destroy our family." "No, Vanessa," I said, my voice steady. "You destroyed our family the moment you started lying. And if you think I'm going to let you ruin my wedding too, you're dead wrong." She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. Finally, she turned on her heel and marched back inside, slamming the door behind her. It was oddly satisfying to watch her retreat. That afternoon, Harper and I met with Mason and Avery to finalize some last-minute details for the wedding. It felt good to focus on something positive for a change, but the tension with Vanessa still loomed over me like a dark cloud. "Do you think she'll try to pull something on the wedding day?" Harper asked as we went over the seating chart. "She might," I admitted, "but I'm ready for her this time. She's not going to ruin this for us." Avery frowned, her usually cheerful expression turning serious. "Do you think she'll come at all? After what happened at the dinner?" "She'll come," Mason said confidently. "Vanessa's too stubborn to back down completely. But if she tries anything, I'll be ready to throw her out." Harper smiled at that. "Thanks, Mason. I might take you up on that." We spent the next hour finalizing details, trying to keep the mood light despite everything that had happened. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope that our wedding might actually go off without a hitch. That hope was short-lived. The next morning, Harper called me in tears. "Carter, Vanessa tried to change the flower order," she said, her voice trembling. "She told the florist we wanted white roses instead of the dahlias we picked. I only found out because Savannah called to double-check." I clenched my fists, rage boiling inside me. "She did what?" "She's still trying to control everything," Harper said. "Even after everything that happened. She just can't stop." "That's it," I said, grabbing my car keys. "I'm going over there. This ends now." When I got to my dad's house, Vanessa was in the living room, flipping through wedding magazines like nothing had happened. She barely looked up when I stormed in. "Vanessa, we need to talk," I said, my voice cold. She sighed dramatically, setting down the magazine. "What now, Carter? Haven't you caused enough drama?" "I'm not the one causing drama," I snapped. "You are. Harper told me what you did with the florist. What the hell is wrong with you?" Her eyes narrowed. "I was just trying to help. You'll thank me later when everything looks perfect." "No," I said, my voice rising. "You don't get to decide what's perfect. This is our wedding, Vanessa, not yours. And if you can't respect that, then maybe you shouldn't be there at all." Her face twisted into a scowl. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me," I said. "I'm done letting you control my life. If you want to be a part of this family, you need to start acting like one. Otherwise, you can stay out of it." She stared at me, her eyes flashing with anger, but I didn't back down. After what felt like an eternity, She finally looked away. Fine, she muttered. Have it your way. But I didn't trust her. Not for a second. That night, I called Claire to check in. How are you holding up? She asked. Honestly, I'm exhausted, I admitted. Vanessa's not backing down, and I feel like I'm constantly putting out fires. But at least I have you and Harper on my side. You're stronger than you think, Carter, she said gently. Don't let her win. This is your day, and she doesn't get to take that away from you. Her words gave me the strength I needed. I wasn't going to let Vanessa win. Not this time. But deep down, I knew the real battle was still ahead. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, but I woke up with a sense of dread in the pit of my stomach. Despite my best efforts to keep Vanessa in check, I knew she wasn't going to let the day go smoothly. She was too proud, too stubborn, and too determined to control everything. But today wasn't about her. It was about Harper and me, and I was prepared to fight for that. Mason picked me up early to head to the venue. You ready for this? He asked as we loaded my suit into his car. As ready as I'll ever be, I said, forcing a smile. Let's just hope Vanessa doesn't pull anything stupid. She won't get the chance, Mason said confidently. If she tries anything, I'll handle it. The garden venue looked beautiful. Harper and Savannah had outdone themselves. Every detail was perfect, from the floral arch to the delicate string lights hung above the ceremony area. Guests were starting to arrive, and I did my best to greet everyone and keep my nerves in check. Harper was tucked away in the bridal suite, getting ready with Avery and her mom. I wouldn't see her until she walked down the aisle, and the thought of seeing her in her dress was the one thing keeping me calm. Then Vanessa arrived. She swept into the venue like she owned the place, dressed in an over-the-top floor-length gown that was far too elaborate for a stepmother at a wedding. Her expression was tight, but she smiled and chatted with guests as if nothing was wrong. I kept my distance, but I could feel her presence like a storm cloud looming on the horizon. Claire arrived shortly after, looking elegant and understated in a pale blue dress. She spotted me and came over, her smile warm and reassuring. You okay? She asked quietly. I will be, as long as Vanessa behaves, I said. Claire gave me a knowing look. If she doesn't, we'll handle it. Together. The ceremony began without a hitch. As the music started and Harper walked down the aisle, my heart felt like it might burst. She looked stunning, her dress flowing behind her like something out of a dream. For a moment, everything else faded away. It was just the two of us, smiling at each other, ready to start the rest of our lives. But the peace didn't last. As the officiant began his speech, I noticed Vanessa shifting in her seat. She kept glancing around, her face tight with something I couldn't quite read. Then, just as the officiant asked if anyone had any objections to the marriage, Vanessa stood up. I have something to say, she announced, her voice cutting through the air like a knife. The crowd gasped, and my stomach dropped. Harper's eyes widened, and I could see the shock and hurt on her face. I stepped forward, my hands clenched into fists. Vanessa, don't do this, I said, my voice low but firm. I have to, she said, her voice trembling. I can't stay silent any longer. Before I could respond, Claire stood up. You want to tell the truth, Vanessa? She said, her voice steady and sharp. Fine. Let's tell everyone the truth. Vanessa froze, her eyes narrowing. This isn't about you, Claire. Oh, it absolutely is, Claire said, stepping forward. For years, you've manipulated this family, lied to Carter and Robert, and tried to control everything around you. And now, on his wedding day, you're trying to ruin one of the happiest moments of his life. The crowd was dead silent, all eyes on the two of them. Vanessa's face turned red, and I could see the panic creeping into her expression. That's not true, Vanessa said, her voice shaking. I've done everything for this family. I've always put them first. No, Claire said, her voice rising. You put yourself first. You lied to Robert about me, made Carter believe I abandoned him, and now you're trying to sabotage his marriage because you can't stand the thought of not being in control. Vanessa opened her mouth to argue, but before she could speak, my dad stood up. Vanessa, is this true? He asked, his voice thick with emotion. For a moment, she just stared at him, her face pale. Then she seemed to crumble, her shoulders slumping as she looked away. I did what I thought was best, she muttered. I was trying to protect this family. Protect us? I said, my voice shaking with anger. You didn't protect us, Vanessa. You tore us apart. And now you're trying to do it again. Harper stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. This is our day, Vanessa, not yours. If you can't support us, then you need to leave. The crowd murmured in agreement, and I could see the embarrassment and defeat on Vanessa's face. She looked at me, then at my dad, as if searching for some kind of lifeline. But no one came to her defense. Finally, she turned and walked away, disappearing down the aisle without another word. The tension in the air broke like a storm passing, and I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. The rest of the ceremony went off without a hitch. Harper and I exchanged our vows, and as we kissed, the crowd erupted into cheers. For the first time in weeks, I felt like everything was exactly as it should be. At the reception, Claire pulled me aside. I'm so proud of you, Carter, she said, her eyes glistening with tears. You stood up for yourself and for Harper. That's what matters. Thanks, Mom, I said, the word feeling natural and right. I couldn't have done it without you. Harper joined us, slipping her hand into mine. Here's to a fresh start, she said, raising her glass. To family, I said, smiling at Claire and Harper. The one we choose and the one we fight for. The rest of the night was a blur of laughter, dancing, and pure joy. Vanessa might have tried to ruin everything, but in the end, she only made us stronger. And as Harper and I drove off into the night, ready to start our honeymoon and the next chapter of our lives, I felt nothing but gratitude for the people who stood by us, and the strength it took to finally stand up for myself.